Welcome to Table Bible Studies with Dan and Ben. New studies are posted every Thursday. In our previous studies, we learned about Ruth's mother-in-law's counsel to her regarding a man named Boaz. Our discussion today picks up at a very exciting point in Ruth chapter 3.
She tells him, find out where he's going to sleep. He's had his meal. He's had his wine. You go lie down by his feet. And then she says, whatever he says, you just do it. So she does. She follows her mother-in-law. And Boaz ate, drank. The Bible says his heart was cheerful. He went to lie down at the end of the heap. Now, why is he sleeping out there? Because there's so much work going on with the harvest. He doesn't want to take the time to go home in Bethlehem and sleep in his house. So he's sleeping out in the field. Yeah. And he's waiting. When morning comes, he'll be at it again. This was a hardworking man, and he knew once harvest time comes, you get that harvest in or it'll get spoiled. So he's sleeping in the field, and it says at midnight, he got startled because Ruth is lying down at his feet. She doesn't wake him up. She doesn't come and tap him on the shoulder and say, hey, marry me. She's just sleeping at his feet or lying at his feet. I kind of doubt she was sleeping. Does it say whether she was sleeping?
She wasn't sleeping.
Yeah, you'd think with the huge significance of what she's doing, her mind would just be constantly running, wondering how is this going to go?
Is he going to, shut me off or shut me down?
What's going to happen? Or is he just going to pull my clothes off and go at it or what? So if he wakes up, he says, who are you? And let me just stop here and say one thing. Had Boaz not been so respectful and kind, I kind of get the feeling Ruth might have shot down that idea. But she trusted this man. She respected him because he respected her. Yeah. And it's like, well, if this could ever work with anybody, it could work with him because look how he has treated me. Yeah. So anyway, she lies down. He says, who are you? He wakes up. Who are you? She says, it's me, Ruth, your maidservant. Take me under your wing. Which is basically saying, marry me. You're a close relative. Now, when you read about Ruth and you read about the commentaries, you read about the concept of a kinsman redeemer. A kinsman redeemer. So I went to Christianity.com and got some notes about what a kinsman redeemer is. It says, in the instance of Ruth, because she had lost her husband, she had to work for essentially scraps. Women in the ancient world had a difficult time finding employment to feed themselves, let alone their relatives. Boaz, seeing this need and his duty as a kinsman redeemer, proposes and marries Ruth. But this goes beyond marriage proposals. The person avenges. A kinsman redeemer can also avenge, protect. In other words, someone in your family, like a woman loses a husband, it's like the responsibility of one of the male men in the family, whoever's closest, to either marry her, protect her, defend her, provide for her, take care of her. He's a kinsman, and redeemer means you look out for them. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important in the story because Ruth is basically saying, you're related, you could be my kinsman redeemer. And the Bible did make it clear, if a man dies and they've got no children, then the brother marries the wife. Now, let me say, this is not the most romantic of a love story because she's saying, I'm desperate, I need someone to protect me, provide for me. I need rest. I need somebody to marry me so that I don't starve to death. Right. This is not bells going off and you're seeing stars and I just love him so much. It's like a desperate woman saying, I need help. Yeah. Sometimes I think we overdo the idea of romantic love. It's a great thing, and God made us capable of romantic love, but there are bigger things, and if all you've got is romantic love, that can go away in about 6 months to a year's time in a marriage. A couple gets married, they lose it, and the guy was saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, and now he's like, I want to divorce you, I don't love you, I don't want you. In 1 year's time, what happened? Well, the romantic love wasn't enough, was it? So this is not exact, we talk about this as a great Bible romance. Well, in a way it's not, because there's not so much idea that she was just gaga over Boaz. And, there is some indication he thought he was intrigued by her and thought she was a pretty attractive lady.
Well, and at the same time, she is following the direction of the mother-in-law. The mother-in-law have, done all this preparation. and sent her on her way to Boaz's feet. So she is just following, knowing that it's one thing to know who you are with.
Yeah.
So she trusted this mother-in-law, Naomi, that much.
Yes.
With all her life, this is like total submission into her life, into her hands. And then she is like directing her, like, I know the right way to, protect you and do all kinds of things that will be beneficial into your life. This is a strange land for you. So follow my direction. And then, all the steps to, preparation and then going there. So it's like, okay, she did it respectively.
Right.
Respectively.
Yeah.
She did it respectively.
So Boaz says, "Blessed are you of the Lord, my daughter. You've shown more kindness at the end than at the beginning, in that you did not go after the young men, whether poor or rich." He seems to be saying, hey, you could have had any of my young men.
Yes.
I'm an older guy, and yet you are essentially proposing to me. So he's kind of flattered and thinks this is neat, that this beautiful young lady, I say she's beautiful, I think she was, but I can't prove it from the Bible. There are hints of that.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's like, you could have had any of my young men. You wanted me. That's awesome. That's wonderful.
This kind of answered the question that we were asking: is he old or young, or middle age? Now he has just voiced it out.
Yeah.
You should have had my younger men who work for me or who are out there.
Right.
But you kind of came to me. So he kind of saw it as a respect.
Yeah.
On his part.
And again, we often are looking at this story and comparing it to our own story.
Yeah.
And I think anybody can see quite obviously that you are younger than I am. And when we first started talking about marriage and liking each other and calling each other, that was a concern of mine. And I listened to a guy who was preaching through the book of Ruth, as I remember.
You listened
because
to
I wanted to hear what he had to say about older guys marrying younger women. I wanted to hear his take on it.
Oh.
And he made one statement that really put my mind at ease.
Okay.
He said, equality of age in marriage, in other words, being equal age, he said, that's desirable, but it's not necessary. And he said, what really counts more is character. Okay. And when he said that, as I remember, I was actually jogging or walking at the park listening through an MP3 player. Mm-hmm. And when he said that, I really felt better. It's like, yeah, it's desirable. If you can swing it, that's probably the best thing, but it's not necessary. And there are some cases where it's just not the plan of God.
Okay.
And so it's like, all right, because here's this beautiful young lady and I'm an older guy. And you think, well, when I'm 70, she'll be this. And when I'm 80, she'll be that. And she'll always be quite a few years behind me.
You did all that calculation?
Well, I don't know if I did it exactly that way, but something along those lines, yeah. And I felt peace, and it's like, yeah, it might be desirable, but in this case, it's not my plan. You go ahead, you marry this lady, which of course I did, and it has worked out well.
Yeah.
Anyway, he says, you're blessed because you're not going after the young guys. He says, don't fear, my daughter. I'll do for you all that you request. All my people know you're a virtuous woman. So it's not just a matter of you're a pretty lady, but you're a virtuous woman. You're a godly woman. He's like, that's the big deal.
Yes.
And it is.
Yes.
Martin Luther King talked about, it's not the color of your skin, it's the content of your character.
Right.
It's character that counts. And from a spiritual point of view, we would say it's not really how beautiful you are, how handsome you are. It's what kind of character do you have? Because the beauty will eventually go. It may last a while, but character is something that can stay for a lifetime, and that's what we want.
Yeah.
So he says, it's true, I'm a close relative. There is someone, a male, who's closer than I. It looks to me like that Naomi owned property through her husband.
Right.
And they mortgaged that property. Somebody else was living on the property, farming the property, so it was essentially mortgaged. And the idea of redeeming it meant you would buy off the property, buy it back, and then marry Ruth, and it'd all be back in the family.
Yes.
So he's like, yeah, I would like to do that, but there is another male who's actually closer related to your family than me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to check with him. So he tells her, stay this night. In other words, don't go out in the middle of the night. Well, he's taking care of her once again. He's
Little family meeting going on.
Well, he's saying, don't go out in the dark. It could be dangerous. So you just stay until it starts to get light. But then you want to go out so people don't see it. So he says, lie here till morning. She lay at his feet. No hanky-panky, no fooling around.
Right.
He's like, if we're going to get married, there'll be plenty of time for that.
That's another point I gave to Boaz.
Yeah.
Because it would be rare to see a man having a pretty lady lying on your feet all night long, and then you didn't just, do like this, touch, or too much touching going on.
Touching and other things.
I don't know about that, but, he kind of respected himself.
And respected Ruth as well.
Respected Ruth as well. Yeah. And, that same protective character of his came up. Yeah. He didn't say, okay, you got to go now. Because he knows that the road is dangerous by night. So he's like, stay, the next morning you can go home.
And I think the fact that he did not insist upon sex right then, right there, helped Ruth to realize even more than she already did.
Yeah.
This is a good man.
Yeah.
This is a man of integrity. This is not your average Joe, average guy. This man is something special. He may be older than me.
Yeah.
He may be a little bit past his prime and not look quite so good as the young guys.
Right.
But this is a good guy, and I wouldn't do bad to marry a man like this.
Well, we women, we know what is good for us. We know who will be, protective, or who will provide for us, or who will, care for us, and who has love for us. We know who, the good one is, and who the, bad one is. And they say even the bad ones, some ladies want to go and they, see what makes you bad. I want to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he says, bring the shawl, and it says when she held it, he measured 6. Now it's my Bible says ephahs, but it's written in parentheses, not parentheses, in italics. 6 ephahs of barley. So basically, it says he measured 6. Some kind of measure.
Yeah.
Now, 6 ephahs would have been 6 baskets. You could not fit that in a shawl or in some kind of a robe of any kind or covering. In fact, she couldn't have carried it had she been able to fill it. It would have taken a cart with a donkey or something to pull it.
Okay.
So he didn't give her 6 ephahs. He gave her 6 measurements of some kind, but he basically filled her up with as much as she could handle with barley. And so she goes back into town where her mother-in-law is staying. She says, is that you, my daughter? And so she tells him the whole story. It must have been exciting, a little nervous.
Tell me all about it.
Yeah, for both of them. Mom, you won't believe what has happened.
I know.
He's interested. And that's the thing Naomi wanted to hear. He's interested. He hasn't shut me down. He doesn't say, what a stupid idea. Forget that, get out of here. He is interested, and he gave me all this barley, but he says he's got to check it out with this other male relative who's closer. And so Naomi tells Ruth, well, just sit still, my daughter. In other words, don't get too upset and worry about it.
Yeah.
He says, until you find out how this is going to turn out, the man is not going to rest until he has concluded the matter this day. In other words,
this is where I drop my pen. Like, this man will not rest until he has gotten you. He's in love already.
Yeah.
So he is not going to rest until he has done everything, the right thing, and then bring you into his house. This is so good.
Yeah. And now Ruth knows a couple of things. Number one, she knows she's going to get married.
Yes.
It's just a matter of, is it going to be Boaz or some other guy she probably has never met?
Right.
So I'm sure she's rooting for Boaz because, she already knows him and he's been so kind to her and they've developed a relationship versus some stranger that she doesn't know about who happens to be more closely related.
Yeah.
She knows she's going to get married. She doesn't know for sure if it'll be Boaz. The mother-in-law says, well, he won't rest until he gets this thing settled.
Yeah.
So it's like there has to be a little bit of faith and waiting for God to reveal who her husband's going to be.
Yes.
Sometimes we wish God would just settle it right then, right there. I'm sure Ruth could have wished, Boaz would have said, wow, this is great. We're going to get married today or tomorrow.
Yeah.
But she has to wait and trust God and see which way God's going to take this thing. So often in our journey of faith, God requires us to wait and see which way this thing is going to go. We don't know. And God doesn't always spill the beans and tell us the whole story. In fact, he almost never does. But we know we can trust him.
Yes.
And so Ruth knew, I'll be taken care of. I hope it's Boaz. At least that's how I see it.
Yeah.
I think she was hoping it would be Boaz, but at least God will take care of me. And essentially our financial woes are over. Again, as we bring this to a close on this chapter, we remind ourselves, we remind you that it is Jesus who is our kinsman redeemer. He will protect, he will defend, he will join himself to us until we have no more needs, because he will supply all of our needs according to God's riches and glory through Christ. So we have a Redeemer. We may be an outsider. We may be from some other nationality than the Jews, but we have a Redeemer who will take care of us, draw us in. We go from some little woman people don't notice who's gleaning and, one of the lowly people, which is about as low as you can get, one of the gleaners, one of the welfare recipients, you might say, to becoming the number one lady in that household and becoming the first lady. Jesus will do that for you, just as he's done it for every believer. We become royalty. We go from beggar to royalty, from child of the devil to child of God. So just as Ruth needed a redeemer, needed a husband, we need a redeemer, and Jesus is that Redeemer.
Benedict and I would like to invite you to study the Bible with us through our podcast. Join us in our home as we do our morning Bible studies. With a podcast, there's nothing to see, you just listen. And that means you can enjoy our Bible study while you drive in your car, go for a walk, or work out at the gym. Our podcast is called Discover the Word with Den and Ben, and you can find it in most platforms where you get your podcasts. And if you know nothing at all about podcasts and how they work, there's a link in the description that will help get you started.